Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. My name is Caleb. I am an advocate here with Galt Advocacy, and today, as always,
I am Dakota, and I am also with Galt Advocacy, also an advocate.
Yes, and Dakota's joining me today. However, it is not a Q&A day, but our lives are usually treated like Q&A.
Usually here for Q&As. I think that's next week, isn't it?
That's next week. So, as those of you who come to our page every week and see these lives, Dakota usually joins me for Q&A. However, we have a cool topic today that a lot of people are asking about, and it's about some of the recent changes with IHSS. And so Dakota's had some opportunities to dive into some of these changes a little bit more than I have, and so hopefully he can provide some really cool perspectives on this. And so, like always, we'll give it a few minutes for some people to log on and join. Dakota, thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely.
In your very busy schedule.
I love being here, and this is a topic that I'm really excited about. We were all like, we were ready to throw a party when we heard about some of these things they were gonna do. It was crazy.
Absolutely. And so if you have IHSS or know somebody who has IHSS, this will be important information. Even if you've had IHSS for years, all of this stuff applies to everybody.
Even more so, if you were denied for IHSS for this particular reason, we'll get into the details. This could be a way that you're going to be able to get the program.
Absolutely. So we're not going to keep it a secret. The big change that we're going to talk about is the provider stuff with IHSS. I know a lot of you are all over Facebook and all over line trying to learn about it and research it. There is some caveats and things about it, which is why we've waited for a few weeks to actually talk about it. But I'm sure a lot of you have been waiting to learn more about it and hear our perspectives, and so that's one of the big ones we're talking about today. So take a minute to share the video and tag people who are also maybe interested in this. I know it's kind of a small knit community with all of us on Facebook where you follow support groups, and I'm sure you've seen posts about the ACL change with providers and IHSS, and so this is it. We're talking about it now. So share this if you can. Tag people who may be interested in hearing about it. Let's just jump into it. So
before we get to the main topic, do you want to bring up the regular new year, new pay rate changes?
Sure. So we'll, like Dakota said, we'll start with this. And we won't spend too much time on it, but if you have questions about it, let us know. So pay rate has gone up, I believe, an average of 50 cents in every county. I think the goal was to get every county above $16 an hour. So I don't think there's any counties left still in the $15 range. I tried to find them, but I didn't see it. So if you're in a county that's still $15 an hour or $15.50, let us know. But I think the purpose of this was to get everybody above 16 now. So I think the lowest I saw was $16.09, I think. And I don't recall what county it was, but I believe we're all above that now. And then, San Francisco County is basically at $20 an hour now. So good on you, San Francisco. If you live out there, nice. I also wanted to bring this up too, because a lot of parents and people who have IHSS don't think about this as much. But sometimes they'll have a really nice pay rate in somewhere like San Francisco County or even Sonoma County. We're, I think, at 18 something an hour now. And then, of course, the cost of living here is expensive. It's expensive to be in Northern California, Bay Area. Same with LA and that's the surrounding areas. And so a lot of times people will seek a lower cost of living area. But unfortunately, they don't factor in the IHSS changes that come with it. And it could be hundreds of dollars per month. So if you move from somewhere like San Francisco and you're getting almost $20 an hour and you want to move to somewhere like Sacramento County, that could be like a 25% pay decrease, because I think Sacramento County is like $16 an hour, $16.50. So just keep that in mind. With these pay rates, it changes every year. Usually every year they go up a little bit. This year I think was the big bump. It was like an average of 50 cents per county. So just keep that in mind, that if you're planning on moving, just know you want to be aware of your pay rate in that county for IHSS, because it could affect dramatically. And again, it could be as much as 25% of a pay cut. Okay, so we have a really good chunk of people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in last week. Last week we broke like a long time record. We averaged like 60 live viewers for a huge period of time, which was really, really cool.
People are really excited about, hearing what's new.
Yeah. And so if you can keep that up, if you could share these videos, tag people in it. It's really cool to get some of you commenting and asking questions and helping each other in the comments. That's really awesome. So hopefully we can do that again today. All right. So a brief thank you. I think it was Jessica. Where will you be heading for the seminar, and when? Wait, where will you be holding the seminar? Okay. That's a good question. I actually don't know. So
Teresa's watching. Hopefully she can put the address or the name of the hotel that we're going to be at with the seminar.
Yes, and thank you, Jessica, because that would be the next thing I wanted to jump into before the big topic today. So we do have a seminar, and it's going to be in person. It's going to be in Downey, California at one of the hotels in that area. It is going to be free. You do not have to pay to attend. It's going to be on the 10th of February. So I think we're like 3 weeks away. So we're going to be there for a couple of days. And so the event, I believe, will start at 2 o'clock, and it usually goes on for a couple of hours. So it'll be an opportunity to meet with you all, and you guys can meet us. Dakota will be joining, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're going to have...
I don't get sick.
So we're going to have me, we're going to have Myra, the founder of Galt Advocacy, we're going to have Dakota, and then we're also going to have Nicole. Nicole is the one who goes live at 12 o'clock, or live at 1 o'clock in Spanish on our Facebook page. So you'll be able to meet all of us. So if you're a client of ours, you've worked with us for years, come on through. If you're new to this and you just want to learn more about Galt Advocacy or more about the world of special needs, that's what we're going to be talking about. So we go over IHSS, SSI, Medi-Cal, Regional Center. We talk about it all. And so it'll be really cool to see everybody. Okay, enough. Let's talk about it. The big change.
Let's get into
Dakota.
it. So I've got a paper copy of the new information here I'm going to be reading off of. And just to give you some background, this came out late in December, this last December. On the 21st, they released this new guidance for how the counties are going to be handling provider issues for minor children who receive IHSS. This was based on, I think the state passed a new bill that removed some of the requirements. And so December, in accordance with that bill, the state released this guidance for the counties. It is not gone into effect yet, and we'll get into when it goes into effect in a bit. But just late December, this came out, and we've been studying it. We've been excited about it, and we've been wanting to,
because we all thought it was a little too good to be true. We were like, there's got to be something about it.
And I will say, it's not been implemented yet, so we don't know. If there's going to be discussions about this, if counties are going to have pushback, or if they're not going to be implementing it correctly.
And I'm sorry, did you say what the change was?
Not yet.
Okay.
We'll get there.
I want to make sure I didn't miss that.
So we don't know how it's going to affect exactly, but we'll get into what it says, right? So there's a bit of background information about why they passed it. Basically, they thought it's not really fair to people that people in certain home situations, people who, might... work full time, or people who might not be allowed to work in the state for whatever reason, their children were going without services when they really deserved the services. So the state decided that wasn't fair, and they wanted to make adjustments. So here is the main point. And if you want to follow along,
and we see your question, Kels, we will get to that. We're going to answer it with what we're going to talk about.
If you want to follow along with this information, you want to look it up yourself. This all comes from All County Letter number 23-106. So if you want to look that up, you can. But we're going to be giving you all the important parts. So most important part from ACL 23-106, page 3, it says this: effective 60 days from the date of this ACL, which by my calculation is about February 19th.
I think so.
It's about February 19th, maybe 20th, maybe 21st. Effective then, pursuant to the law that was passed, counties will cease to apply the minor recipient provider eligibility rules set forth in the Manual of Policies and Procedures.
Ooh.
I'll explain what that means in a bit. Set forth in the Manual of Policies and Procedures in those sections. This will ensure that all minor recipients have access to their provider of choice. As such, minor recipients will have the same access to IHSS providers that is currently available to adult recipients.
That answers your question, Kels. So the parent providers, I've talked about this a bunch. Dakota and I have here on Facebook. There's two types of providers: a parent provider and a regular paid provider, right? The parent provider means you're caring for a minor, which means there's rules with employment. You can't work full time. An adult paid provider, caring for an adult who's not a minor, the restrictions don't matter. You can work as much as you want, right? They're now saying they're eliminating the parent-provider rules and restrictions based on this ACL. Is that true, Dakota?
Yes. Now let me clarify what we mean, and we'll get into the details. This is just for the ability to choose the provider you want. Other rules regarding minor children are going to remain the same.
Yes.
Rules about what kind of hours they can get and how many hours. We've discussed these things a lot about parental responsibility for providing certain services and things like that. That's all staying the same. The difference is whether or not you as a parent can be a provider or you want to hire someone else to be a provider. Now it's just the same as if you had an adult child.
Yes. So it's the employment side, right? So your needs for certain categories are still the same, right? You can't get meal preparation for a 3-year-old now just because of this change. It's not what it's saying.
That's not changing at all. They still will assess your child as a child. They're still 3 years old. They're going to assess them as they would for a 3-year-old. But now, if you want, if you're working full time, but you also want to be the provider, you can do that. If both parents are working less than full time, but they want to be providers, they can do that. If they want to hire someone else to be a provider, you can do that. There's just a million different ways that you can apply this now if you want to, Now, when it comes to, trying to say, oh, we have to drop our hours below full time in order to get IHSS, don't have to do it anymore. Hey, if you've already done that, if you've been working part time in order to get IHSS, if you want to, you can now go back up to full time and still be a provider.
Yes, that's just amazing. That's really cool.
It also means that you can split the hours evenly between two different parents. So if mom and dad both want to be providers, but before they had to, only one of them could be, the other one had to work. Now you can both be providers. So there's so many different ways. And if people have questions about, how this works, we can get into that. I want to get into sort of some of the details of what this does or doesn't change.
Real quick, Lola, the seminar will not be recorded, so you will have to come. Sorry.
Don't miss it.
And thank you for all the great comments and nice words, everybody. We're really thankful we're able to provide some information.
I think we'll try to get through this quickly so that if people do have questions, we'll have time to get through that.
Yes, so we're not ignoring you. We're going to come to your questions, and I just want to say thank you again for all the kind words. So hang tight in the comments. We're getting to you.
Okay. So again, like I said, we think this is going to go into effect about February 19th, maybe a couple days later. That's pretty much where 60 days is from when this came out. At that time, and this is something I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of, counties are going to update your provider assignment of hours for all minor cases when you request it or at your new reassessment. So if for some reason, if you are in a situation where your hours have been lowered or you want to change your provider situation, maybe you've been limited to how many hours you can claim because you're a non-parent provider, as soon as this goes into effect, you should call your county and say, hey, I've been limited to only doing 4 hours a day because that's when the parents are away. I want to claim the full 8 hours or 10 hours because these rules have changed. And as soon as you call them, they're supposed to make that change. If you don't call them, they're going to wait till your next assessment to make that change. So, if your hours are going to be lowered because of that or have been lowered because of that, call them as soon as that change goes into effect and let them know that you want to get your case updated. They're supposed to update every case at the reassessment, but
that may not happen.
You can ask them to do it sooner, and that's...
They're also supposed to send a notice of action out 30 days after your assessment. Doesn't always happen.
Now, this part, I'm just going to touch on this briefly because in the ACL, if you've read it yourself, you might be a little worried because there's a part that says, oh, this doesn't change that if a person is on the PCSP version of IHSS, then they can't have a parent provider. And that's true. There is and it's really complicated. I don't even understand all of it myself. But there are different types of IHSS. One is the CFCO, and one's PCSP, and one's IPO.
It's all the same. It's referring to the Medi-Cal program.
It's all the same. It just is where the money comes from, basically. Yeah. And there's some rule that says if you're getting it on a PCSP, you can't have a parent provider. Now, this doesn't really matter because what it says here is that the county, the social worker, it's their job to ensure that if the child wants to have a parent provider, that they get put on the correct program so that they can have a parent provider. So if they say, sorry, you can't be a parent provider because you're on this program, it's their job to switch you off of that program so that you can be the parent provider. So don't worry about that. It says it right here. If you were previously on the PCSP program and you want to now be a parent provider because the rules changed, it's their job to switch you onto the correct program so that you can do that. So just so you know, that's in there. So if they tell you that, set them straight, or get, have an expert set them straight, take it to a hearing, whatever you need to do to make sure that happens.
And it's important that if you are met with some grief or some pushback, have this ACL handy. Again, Dakota, it's ACL what?
It is ACL 23-106.
So look it up yourself. We'll try and even pin it in the comment section or make a post about it. Mm-hmm. But again, ACL 23-106. Have that handy. Have that with you and in front of you, so that if you are going to bring it up to the social worker, don't be expecting them to know everything about it. Again, we're talking with social workers every week at assessments with clients that we work with, and some of them didn't even know that this ACL came out. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared, and don't just allow them the opportunity to read it themselves and apply those changes that you're asking.
Okay, this part here is basically just saying that some rules are staying the same. I'm on page 5 if you're following along, and it talks about how previously the rules had said something like a parent providing for their minor child can only get time in certain categories, basically not including domestic, and it's pretty much just that one. That's like the only category they can't get. The update says it should be noted that limitation of minors can only get certain hours now applies to anyone who is their provider, not just parents. And I think it always applied to anyone, but they just want to make it sure it's clear. Whoever is the provider for this child, the hours the child can get is remaining the same. There's nothing changing there. I think, let's see. Yeah, IHSS program eligibility remains unchanged. The provider enrollment process remains unchanged.
Still a headache. That needs to change.
And this is really just a very definitive statement here on page 6. It says, minor recipients and their authorized representatives, that's you, have the right to select a provider of their choice as long as that provider has successfully completed provider enrollment. So if you want yourself to be a provider, if you want another family member, aunt, uncle, grandma, or someone who's not related, who's just being paid to do it, you can select whoever you want as long as they have completed provider enrollment. And I think that's all. Everything else is pretty much, here it is. One last thing, and I think this is going to be, I'm going to be joining Nicole for the Spanish Live as well, but if you are disallowed from being a provider, such as if you have a felony conviction, or if you're undocumented, cannot work in the United States, but you're the parent, you still have the right to choose whatever provider you want. And this is this is, again, a very big change, is that previously, if there was a family with an undocumented parent, they were just disallowed, right? Yep. Because that parent can't be the provider through IHSS, and the state considered them to be able and available, and so the other parent couldn't be the provider either. So that's completely going away now, and they'll be able to have whatever provider.
Nice.
So it's, and that's pretty much the rest of it. All of the rest of the ACL just says these other rules are basically staying the same. How you become eligible, how you enroll, all that's going to stay the same. The big difference is just your work hours as a parent are not going to be counted against you.
Absolutely. It's
exciting.
Huge.
We love it. Like because we can give some examples of we've had people who both parents, because of the nature of their jobs, could only work 35 hours each, right? Yeah. Both of them working 35 hours each. It's basically full time, but they couldn't raise one and lower the other to get to that point of being eligible, and now they can. It doesn't matter. Even if you're both working part-time, you could both be providers. You could have one or the other be a provider. It's totally fine.
Yes. Now, one thing that doesn't change with this as well is the exemption stuff, correct?
Yes. The exemptions of how many hours a provider can provide, that's staying the same. And I do imagine that in a 2-parent household, it may be less. You may be less likely to get the exemption because now there's a person right there who could be the provider, right?
Yeah. Which I think kind of goes in line with some of the theories as to why they've made this change. I mean, there's probably plenty of reasons.
It is possible, yeah.
But it does sound like the county, in some ways, the social workers, the actual boots on the ground in the field people, it sounds like they sort of maybe lobbied for this a lot too, just because we are seeing some social workers who are like super stoked about it, just like we are. They may have had nothing to do with it. I don't know. But, you know, when it comes to these benefits, as advocates, we're always very skeptical of procedures, policies, regulations. Clearly, there are regulations and policies that are not in favor for families, and it can make it harder to get these things. So I'm always cautious and skeptical. And so in my mind, it's like, how is the county gaining from this change? They may gain nothing. I don't know. It could be eliminating.
I think a lot more people are going to be able to get IHSS from this.
Absolutely.
But I do see what you mean. Of like, there'll be less. There may be less overtime hours because more people are eligible to be providers.
Yes.
To give context to what he's saying, the exemption we're talking about, because there's a lot of people that may have never seen us before. The exemption
we're getting to your comments. That's going to be next.
Yeah,
hang tight.
We'll be right there. The exemption he's talking about is that normally a provider can only provide 283 hours per month, or I think it's about 66 hours per week.
Yes, that's 4.3 weeks technically. Yeah. Anyways, continue.
That's the maximum of what you're allowed to provide, 66 per week. However, if you are one person who's taking care of multiple recipients, and there's no one else who can do it, like let's say you're a single parent and you've got multiple kids and you're taking care of both of them, and there's no one else who can come into the house that often to do the care, you can apply for exemption 2, which makes it so that you by yourself can claim up to 90 hours per week or 360 per month, and that's the exemption he's talking about. So what we're saying is, now that more people can be hired to be providers, the rules are less strict about that. There may be less people who are getting exemptions to go up to 360 hours because there's more available providers. But there may not be, because it's a situation, there may not be another available provider, and you could still get the exemption. That's not changing. The exemption's not going away.
Yeah, and the criteria for it's not going away. That's still the same.
Everything about that has stayed the same.
Got it. All right, are we ready to jump into some of the questions?
Let's do some questions.
Jessica, welcome back. Jessica, do you know if you could sign up a 16-year-old sibling to become an IHSS provider to help care for their siblings? The short answer is yeah, they can be. I believe you have to be 16. However, if you are a minor paid provider, I believe you're capped at 195 hours. I could be wrong on that, but to my understanding, that's what it is. So I believe if you have a sibling in the home who has protective supervision and you have a 16-year-old who is neurotypical, I believe they can get paid for up to 195 because I think there's some type of the parental responsibilities thing comes into play when it comes to the domestic tasks and the personal care and things like that. It's a little weird. So the answer is yes, you can be a provider at 16. I'm just unsure of the caps on that, unless you have an idea.
I don't remember.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being so patient. Hopefully you're all still here. If you asked a question, we're getting to them now. So, Faith, so can my minor child hire somebody else besides me? Yes. So pretty much anybody can be a provider.
The answer is anyone can be a provider. There is some language in here about how if the authorized like if the parent wants to be the provider, but then the child wants someone else to be the provider, the county has to look into that. There's some language in there about that. I can't imagine. Well, I guess I could imagine that could
case by case
potentially happen. Yeah. I'll try to find where it talks about that in here.
Yeah. Rachel, does this mean a second parent that works full-time can be a provider? Yes, it does. It means that the parent-provider rules as far as how many hours you work per week are no longer in effect. So yes, doesn't matter which parent it is. One of you can work full-time. You both can work full-time. You both can be part-time or unemployed. It does not matter. That's the big change. That's what we're stoked about. Alicia, how about a child with one parent? So if you are in a one-parent household, you can work full-time, you can work part-time, you can be unemployed. They removed the work requirements.
Yep. And I did find the language about that. I don't even know if that was what the question was about, but I figure I'll bring it up in case this does come up in some people's situations, where it says, although authorized representatives have the authority to direct care, minors still have the right to notify the county of their choice of provider.
That's interesting.
If a minor expresses a different choice of provider from the authorized representative, the county should explore the reason for this choice and determine if there are any health and safety issues behind the minor's request for a different provider. So I think they're generally going to go with what the authorized representative says, unless there's like a clear and convincing reason why the authorized representative's choice of provider wouldn't be the right person. I think is what that's saying. That's one of those things that we haven't really seen in action, and I think it would have to be a very case by case basis thing that would have to be dealt with in hearings, in court cases, to really flesh out what exactly that would look like.
Yeah, I'm guessing they have to have that because they probably have had plenty of cases where the parent wasn't fit to be the caregiver, and children children are young, but they're not dumb, right? A child knows when they're not being cared for.
And a minor might mean up to 16 or 17 years old. And so when a 17-year-old says, no, I don't want this person to be my provider, I want it to be this other person, there could be a good reason. It could just be that they just prefer this other person. Maybe they want their friend to get paid instead of their mom, That's something that could come up, and it's something that I think is going to have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
Yep. Kels, you are her full-time provider, and you had to quit your job. I mean, that's the whole point of IHSS for a child, right? They only paid you if you had to leave full-time employment or couldn't work full-time because of their needs, right? And so I'm sorry, by the way, that you had to quit your job. That's really unfortunate, and you're not alone.
And that was the rules back then, but starting in February, well, not beginning of February, February 19th-ish, that's going away. You can take another job, you can work full time, you can split your hours between you and someone else. There's all kinds of things you can do now that you weren't able to before. Yeah.
So Kels, you said that you had to quit your job. Thank you for sharing. You're welcome to continue. I know some people have to quit because they just can't work full time because of their needs, and some people do have the ability to work full time and they can care for their child, but they're forced to by the social worker in that sense to so that they can become a provider from IHSS, right? Now, again, normally you can't say that. You can't say, I quit my full-time job so I can be a provider, right? You have to technically be unable to work full-time due to the needs of the child. And so I'm just happy we don't have to talk about that anymore. I'm just happy that's all gone. And
I just want to bring up something else that I just remembered. So I'll read this, and you'll know where I'm going at with this, where one part of this says, additionally, if an individual voluntarily provides a service that is eligible for provider reimbursement, the county must obtain a voluntary services form to count the service as met in accordance with manual policies and procedures for voluntary services done for free, basically.
Are we going to talk about that? Because we can.
Well, basically what I wanted to say was, that's still in effect. If let's say mom is the primary caregiver and she's doing most of the work, but dad helps out with some things, up until now, they'd say, "Oh, what does Dad help with? Oh, he does some of the cooking. Oh, he helps them in the bathroom. He puts them to bed at night. Okay, have Dad sign this form that says he's going to do all this for free." Well, now
they won't say that.
No, they won't say it like that.
That's the point of the form.
They still will have to get that form in order to take those hours off of your case. But now that these rules have changed, there's no need for anyone to do any of this stuff for free, because now, well, yeah, he helps out, but he's going to be a provider too. We're both going to be providers there. And so if some of your hours are taken off for voluntary services because grandma helps out sometimes, or your sister or dad or whoever, right? Now, all those hours that were being done for free, they can become providers and be paid to do those things.
There is no need to sign that form anymore, right?
There's basically no reason to do the voluntary services unless the person doing the service is disqualified from being a provider.
I have a scenario, Dakota. We talked about it recently. It was a client that I'm working with, a family. They applied for their child, and they got protective supervision. We're working on a few other things. However, during the process, the social worker said, "Great, so you're the one that's caring for your child. Is that right?" "Yes." "Great. And you do X, Y, and Z and all this stuff, right?" "Yes." "And you currently don't get paid to do this, right?" "That's right." "Great. Sign the voluntary form." And they signed the voluntary form. So in that scenario, the social worker just eliminated the only paid provider available for that person. Because if you sign the voluntary form, you're opting out of getting paid IHSS. So we're hoping it was just a mistake.
Sneaky, man.
We're hoping it's just a mistake. And I'm sorry, this person wasn't approved for protective supervision. We're in the process of helping them get that through an appeal. But that was the weird part, is they can't even claim the hours that they have because they signed the voluntary form saying they're willing to work for free. So again, it's another thing that I'm glad we don't have to worry about. Patricia, excuse me. The seminar will be in Downey, California, which is, to my understanding, just outside LA. You have to forgive us. We are not from the Southern California area.
I think Teresa put some more specific information in there.
Yeah. Faith, I was told only parents can be providers. So again, that's a part of the big changes that we're talking about.
Now, technically, non-parents could have been providers before under certain circumstances, but they were limited in how many hours they could do.
Yeah.
And actually, that's another important change. If you were if you had a non-parent provider prior to this change, there was a rule that said they could only provide the hours while the parents were away. So if there was two parents in the house, let's say they both worked full time, but one worked from 8 to 5, and the other worked from 12 to 8 or whatever, right? Well, the non-parent provider could only claim hours from 12 to 5. So you're limited to a 5-hour thing, even though the child might get twice that many hours of IHSS. So the non-parent provider could only provide that little amount of time. Now the rules are changed. That no longer applies. A non-parent provider can get paid all of the hours. And that's why if you're in a situation like that, you should call your social worker and say, hey, we want our provider, I don't remember what the term was, but we want our provider notice to be changed so that we can claim the full amount of hours because there's no longer any consideration for the parent's work schedule.
Laura, does that mean if I have two kids on IHSS that one parent can take one kid and the other parent take the other kid and not be limited to 66 hours per week? I take care of two while my spouse works. I am currently limited to 66 hours per week. I have hours past that I cannot claim because of the rule of 66 hours per week. So we talked about the exemption before. There is an exemption that allows you to go beyond the 66 hours per week, up to 90 hours per week. However, that's reserved for people who don't have another provider in the home, right, or another provider available. In your situation, you have a spouse, and because that spouse works full time, that person hasn't been able to be the provider. So in your situation, this is a great example. I'm glad we're starting to kind of get into some examples here. Mm-hmm. So in a two-parent household, yes, one parent can be a full-time 66 hours per week for one person if they have that many hours. The other parent can claim all of that other person's hours too, regardless of their working status. So yes, starting in February 19th-ish, we believe, your spouse can be the provider for one of the children's hours, all of them. So you can have all of them for one, the other one can have all of them for the other one. So this is going to really, really help and maximize the benefit and the monies into your home for these people. And that's the whole point of trying to get rid of this rule, is because people like you in your situation, it's not yes, it affects you financially, but again, if you are their parent and guardian, it's affecting them. Mm-hmm. They are the special needs individual in California. This is their benefit that they're entitled to. The benefit itself has nothing to do with you. If they need this benefit, they should get it. And so they shouldn't be penalized because of regulations that one parent has to work full time, right? And so this is a perfect situation, and I'm really glad, Laura, that you brought this up. So yes, starting
as soon as it goes to effect, the dad of the children can start being a provider if he wants to lower his work hours, if he wants to spend more time at home and be able to just be a provider.
I feel really bad for social workers on February 19th when everybody's calling their social worker about the change.
It's a little bit our fault.
That's okay. Blow them up. Blow up their phones and call every social worker you can on February 19th and 20th.
1/3 of you like claim dibs on calling on the 19th, and then the next third get the 20th, and the next third get the 21st.
Estella, thank you. We appreciate you being here.
Same situation as...
Arlette said, same situation. I have protect supervision for one and denied IHSS from a younger son for no good reason. Well, sorry about that, Arlette, and we're happy to help out. If you have some questions about that, we can definitely try and advise. Let us know about your kiddo. Thank you for tagging people, guys. It's definitely helpful for us and for them to learn this information. So don't forget to share the video if you can. Tag people or support groups if you have a minute. Autumn, what is the maximum amount of hours a parent provider can work for their recipient if they have a full-time job?
Basically, same as everyone else. Now, I will throw this out there, which is that realistically, if you have a full-time job that keeps you away from home for so long that you're literally not there,
that's a good point.
Provide the IHSS, then if you're like
like a traveling nurse and you're gone for
or a
weeks at
truck
time.
driver and you're like literally gone for like 3 days at a time, and then you can't also claim IHSS and say, oh yeah, I was providing IHSS during those 3 days when I wasn't even in the state.
Right.
Like that would be sort of like an extreme example of when you're working full time, so much so that you literally can't be the IHSS provider.
Yeah, so you can work technically
within
much.
reason, as long as you're at home, because I think it's about 10 to 12 hours a day that you would usually put down per day for IHSS.
For the max? Well, if you get 283 hours approved, that's the maximum. That's the cap.
Right.
I think that equals out to be about 9 hours a day, 9.5 hours a day. I could be wrong, but it's either way, it's something like that. 9, 10, 11.
It's 66 a week, right? Yeah. So whatever 66 divided by 7 is, assuming you get the maximum hours, calculators on the stand in front of us. Yeah.
7 times 10 is 70.
Okay, so
so almost 10 hours a day. All right, 9, 10 hours a day.
Let's just say 10 is easy, right? So if 10 hours a day is about what you're supposed to claim per day for your weekly maximum, and you're gone from the home 20 hours a day somehow, then yeah, that would affect your ability to claim hours. But like that would be a very extreme case. Under any normal circumstances, if you're just working a regular 8-hour day job, you can claim the hours no problem.
In that scenario, it would be better to have another provider do the work anyway.
Yes,
that is period. True. Just keep it simple, right? Thanks for the question, Autumn. Great one. Christine, both parents are working full time. Are we qualified to be providers? One parent can only be a provider? No. You both can be providers to understanding now.
Once it changes.
Once it changes,
you can both work full time, both be providers. One of you can be a provider however you want.
Okay, Susan says the school's work permit will tell you how many hours. Oh, okay, yes. So for a teenager, like a 16-year-old, you do have to get a work permit to do that.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it is. I think every school district is different, but that's true. Christine, will this affect regional center hours? No, it will not. Corinne, you said I get $195 for both my children, and my social worker told me to have their dad be the second provider and just do the time tracker as if he's helping me.
Yeah, I think even before this change, when you have two children that both are getting protective supervision, or at least a comparable number of hours, that most counties can arrange something to have both parents be providers. They have been doing that, even though it's kind of difficult within the rules to make that work. But with this, everyone will be able to do that, and it won't be
less confusing.
It'll be so much easier now.
Yep. Sorry, I'm shaking the camera so much. Thank you, Rachel. Michelle, where can I find this online? A felony doesn't disqualify you from being a provider.
Right. I said that was a little bit not specific enough. There are a couple very specific offenses, such as I think abuse of a minor or abuse of an elder, and I think defrauding the government. I think there are a few
Make sure you're filtering your words, because they will take down lives if you say stuff that's like. I just know when we read some of the felonies, like some of those like really big words, those no words.
I'm not going to say those because those ones actually don't count.
Okay, perfect.
Weirdly enough, but like some of those things, specific ones that are like abuse of vulnerable populations and defrauding, those offenses specifically are like for 10 years or something like that. You can't be an IHSS provider.
And what we've learned is if you did get a felony under one of those things too, yes, it will stay on your record for 10 years for IHSS to see. However, what's kind of funky about it is, to our understanding, it technically never goes away. So you can't be a provider for 10 years. That's the one thing we do know. At the end of the 10-year mark, when it kind of falls off, sort of off the record, that doesn't mean you can be a provider again. It means that the county or the payroll or the provider enrollment, they still have to sort of look into it and approve you. That's the reason why they have a provider enrollment process. So if they feel they have the opportunity to approve or deny you even after the 10 years is over. So just because you hit that 10-year mark, it does not mean that you automatically will get approved. Just a heads up. Estella, like respite, it shouldn't. You're right.
It shouldn't affect the hours. Yeah.
Elmer, can a parent provider be a full-time provider and also be allowed to run a small business on the side?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is like all of our answers have been really short and simple, but that's just how it is. It's like all these parent provider rules about how you work and where you work and all that. It's just.
Teresa, you said you got in late. Well, welcome anyways. Glad you're here. Hopefully you're still here. Does this pertain to just minors? I mean,
well, yeah, yes. Basically, what they're saying is now minors are being treated just like everyone else when it comes to this part of it. Again, in case anyone did show up late, this does not affect how minors are assessed for hours. Mm-hmm. So they're not going to start giving you time in categories you didn't get it in before or anything like that. This is just provider eligibility.
All right, Esteban, we got 2 kids, and I even received a letter that only one parent can be the provider. Mm-hmm. So that's changing.
That's how it's been.
Christine, yes, they will take away respite.
Will they take away?
Oh, will they take away respite daycare hours? So we've talked about this before. So you have to remember, all of these programs are supposed to go hand in hand with each other. They're supposed to work together, work on top of each other in a sense. So if you get approved for max 66 hours per week of IHSS Protect Supervision, should that jeopardize respite? Should that jeopardize your personal assistant with Regional Center? The answer is no. You can make it all work. So there are 24 hours in a day. You can use all 24 of those hours for all these different services. You can claim the IHSS hours at nighttime while they're sleeping in some situations. Protective supervision specifically, right? So you just have to be creative. So if you're told by your caseworker or you're told by a social worker, IHSS Regional Center, they say something different, they're probably wrong. You can get as many respite hours as you're qualified for, and you can get as many IHSS hours as you're qualified for. They should not jeopardize either one of them. Mm-hmm. They should not clash, is what I'm saying.
How much time do we got? We doing good?
We're just about there. Let's try and swim through these last comments. Rachel, in a 2-parent household with an exemption, will the county automatically request the second provider to be an additional provider? This is the stuff that we're trying to see what's going to happen.
I'm kind of interested to see that because I can imagine that there will probably be some pressure to get a second parent provider rather than have to. The county, doesn't want to pay out more overtime, so they might push for that. Yeah.
Vanessa said, "Can we please post this information? We'll definitely try and get this new ACL up for you guys." Christine, this is great because parents can now have an option to be a provider. It's hard to be a provider in the middle of the night when my child is awake. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cody, my recipient.
Wait, what's the name of the form?
What form?
Is that the ACL?
Oh, what's the name of the form? Oh, yes. So it's ACL 23. Dash 106. And again, we'll make a post about it so that you have it as well.
The recipient rejected my timesheet. I worked those hours and want my money. I spoke to social worker. Nothing has been done. What to do next?
This is Cody's comment, not you.
I think that's sort of
my recipient rejected my timesheet. I worked those hours and want my money. I spoke to the social worker and nothing has been done. What to do next? You need to contact payroll. So you need to contact payroll. Which should be listed on the notice of action. You can also just Google IHSS payroll in your county. You need to call them, or public authority. You need to call them, and if they don't want to contact the social worker for you, then you need to contact the social worker supervisor. So call the county directly, go on hold, unfortunately, get a hold of an IHSS clerk, ask to speak to that social worker supervisor, let them know the situation, find out why they're rejecting the timesheet, because it may just be a misunderstanding of some sort. If you discover that they did it in error and they still don't want to fix the issue, you got to contact...
The recipient rejected it. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So this is more of a dispute.
The recipient,
and like you said, payroll first, I think, is still the right place because they're going to...
So payroll, absolutely. The other thing, too, is... I'm sorry, I missed the recipient part. This is also what the union is for. So you can contact the union and ask them questions about this particular situation. So I don't know the steps on how you would go about this per se, but I would start by talking to the union, payroll, and go from there. Mm-hmm. Anna, there will be a live in Spanish at 1 o'clock.
In just a few minutes here, yeah.
Can you address the fact that MODOC and other counties are removing all PS hours and don't put our kids into conservator?
If we don't put our kids into conservator. Oh, I hadn't heard about that, did you?
Well, I mean, that sort of goes to say for most counties. I'm not familiar with MODOC County specifically. I didn't know that that's something going on in that county, but we do know that IHSS is They're on fire right now. They're removing protective supervision all over the state. And they've always been weary of granting or continuing protective supervision if the person's not conserved. So if you know people who are losing protective supervision, whether it's because of a conservatorship or maybe it's a social worker that's out of line, that's what we're here for. We'd love to hear from every single one of you. If you're having trouble with protective supervision or you know somebody who's having trouble with protective supervision, hours are being denied or removed, you need to file for an appeal, you need some guidance, that's what we do. Call us. Get on our calendars. We'd love to help you.
I mean, we are supportive of getting conservatorships, but
Yes.
we don't believe that county should take it away because you don't have one. Absolutely not.
Yes, so to answer that, or I guess to kind of turn it into a question, you still can get protective supervision without a conservatorship. It is not a mandatory part of it. Not everybody who needs protective supervision needs a conservatorship, right? And not everybody who needs a conservatorship needs protective supervision. And so odds are, if you are conserved, you probably will qualify for protective supervision in a lot of scenarios. But and we're not going to give our opinion on conservatorships. We know that it's time and a place. My siblings who have Down syndrome are all conserved, and that's the best choice. That's the best thing for them with our situation. If you have questions about conservatorships, we highly suggest you reserve those questions for an attorney who can maybe talk on that and provide actual legal counsel for you. So for us, we can give you some opinions, but we do have to kind of filter ourselves a little bit because we're not lawyers, so we have to be kind of careful. Deborah, hi, my daughter was diagnosed and, okay, we're going to...
I'll read it.
Okay,
Diagnosed with level 2 autism recently through a virtual assessment through best practices, but my regional center denied it and said I have to wait for their doctor to do evaluation. She will be 3 in March. I'm worried she can't get services. Any thoughts on this? Do you have thoughts on that?
Sure. So to read through it again, virtual assessment through best practice, but regional center denied it and said that I have to wait.
Do the regional center doctor to do the evaluation.
So this is for the diagnosis of autism. So that's what the assessment is for, right? Sorry, I can't even see the comment. My shirt's in the way.
Yeah.
Okay, so she was diagnosed with autism through the virtual assessment. Gotcha. Okay. But the regional center denied it and said they have to. Okay. So so if this assessment was done by a licensed physician who specializes in this, then it should be taken to heart with regional center. Regional center does have the right to request an evaluation themselves. And so it's up to you if you're comfortable with that or not, but they can deny and reject anybody for any reason. They have the right to do that, just like you have the right to appeal. So if your caseworker or the regional center itself is not accepting the diagnosis from this evaluator, this virtual evaluation, they may be within their right to do that. Every regional center is a little different. So what I would suggest is just get assessed by that regional center. If that's a caveat for them. If they deny autism, if they say nope, the assessment does not include autism, and you disagree with it, then you'd have to probably go in another way through the school. The school can provide a free evaluation, and you can always again appeal it. So that would be kind of my suggestion. So they can deny the evaluation elsewhere if for some reason they don't feel like it's sufficient enough.
LA County for thing.
Arlene, do you have a copy of the form? Yes, we'll try and post everything for you guys.
Voluntary form? You can see that.
Oh, the voluntary form? Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember what exactly it's called, but we can probably find it.
Is this for all counties in California, like Imperial County? Yes, it is.
Every county has to adopt this. Some may be slower to pick up on it than others, but they all have to implement this. Yeah.
Vanessa's asking, any rules on a parent provider being able to collect SSI for themselves while being on in-home support as a
provider, yeah.
So you can't collect SSI or SSDI for yourself and claim all of the IHSS hours. So normally they will deny you as a paid provider if you're on disability or if you're claiming something like SSI, because again, those are resources that are used for somebody who can't work. And so being an IHSS provider is a job. It's something you are getting hired to do. And so they see it that way, just like you would if you were to get a job at Starbucks or you were working something else. So you can still become a provider.
But then you'd probably lose the SSI.
You would lose the SSI. SSDI is a little different. To my understanding, you can become a provider on SSDI, but there's a process that you have to go through. There's like a God, I can't remember what it's called, but they basically put you on like a track. So you can be a provider, but you can only claim a certain amount of hours, and you have to do that for several months until eventually you're no longer on SSDI, and then you can claim all the hours. So just think of it this way. If you're claiming SSI or you're claiming SSDI, you're probably not going to get the IHSS hours. Kels, her needs are the reason I had to quit. I'm a single parent
all right.
and get maximum hours. Yeah.
Even with this change, you probably wouldn't go back to work.
Yeah. If a child goes back and forth between parent houses, can both parents be IHSS providers in their own homes? The answer is yes, and almost kind of have to be. So if there is if there's two parents in the picture, they both live across town. I'm sorry, one parent they live not in the same home. There are questions that are going to be asked of you at the time of the assessment. The social worker is going to want to know who is watching this child at what time. And so if you say that I have this child Monday through Wednesday, and then dad has the child Wednesday through Sunday, or Wednesday through Saturday, whatever, that would be 50-50, right? So if you said I have 50-50 custody with dad, then technically whatever IHSS income, whatever IHSS hours are approved for that child, the other parent is entitled to 50% of it. So you do have to notify that other parent that you are pursuing IHSS. And again, that's in a situation where there's like 50-50 custody. Now, what if they split time, but it's like 80-20 or 90-10, right? It's still best practice to notify the other parent that you are applying for IHSS, because they still are entitled to that percentage of IHSS. And again, it's a little funky, it's a little weird, but they also don't have to claim it. But that doesn't mean that you get to claim it. Does that make sense? So if it's 50-50, one parent is entitled to 50%. That's it. They cannot claim the other parent's 50% if the other parent doesn't claim it.
Right.
So those hours will be left unpaid. It's up to that other parent to become a provider.
Right. I don't even know how we could have like a million more questions that we don't even.
We could. We got to
see.
pretty much go. Cody, I also can't find my old recipient 3 years ago. I was told that I wouldn't get paid for those 4 months I worked unless I locate her. We're going to come back to your question. We're going to read through it and see if we can comment the answer. Christine, I called my county, and they said they don't know about this information yet.
Yeah, we've heard, had some that know, some that are excited about it, and some that had no idea that was coming.
Hi, Marie. You have an adult daughter, and you are the provider. We have nursing care as well. Does that change anything? It does not. Michelle, any changes to the requirement of conservatorship to have PS hours? So again, you don't have to have a conservatorship to get protective supervision. There's nothing changing about that.
Yeah. And this isn't going to change anything about that. Once a person turns 18, it's the same as it was before.
If I was grandfathered in for the exemption for one of my oldest, can my husband get exemption 2 for my second child? So again, the exemption 2 is so that one person can claim as many hours as possible. So if there's 2 eligible providers in the home, then you're not getting the exemption.
Probably not, yeah.
We'll come back. All right, so we're out of time, everybody. We have to get Dakota ready to join Nicole at 1 o'clock. So literally in about 4 or 5 minutes, Nicole and Dakota are going to be going live in Spanish on our Spanish page. You guys have commented so many questions, and we weren't able to get to all of them. I'm so sorry. We're going to come back, and we're going to try and answer them as many as we can in the comments section ourselves. So
we also are going to have a Q&A next week.
Yes. So questions that we may not get to, we also may save some of your questions for Q&A.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Every Friday at 12 o'clock, we go live here in English. And then at 1 o'clock, we go live in Spanish with Nicole. So put it on your calendar. Friday this next week, the last Friday of the month, Dakota and I are coming back. We'll be
same
right
time,
here.
same place, same people. What in the world?
And we're doing Q&A.
We're going to be answering your questions. So if we didn't get to your question and we don't answer it in the comments later, tune in again, and we can we'll have more time to get to it then.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by. I hope everybody has a happy Friday. Stay safe and enjoy your weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.